Hi everyone, Charles from the Food People here. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. It's my great pleasure to welcome Marketing Director of Mindful Snacker and Simply Roasted, Ruth Fittock. Ruth joins me today to talk about challenging snacking norms, a new wave in healthy snacking, how you can balance HFSS guidelines with a no compromise snacking experience, and of course, the deeper purpose behind the brand. So welcome, Ruth. Thanks for joining me today as part of the Food People in Conversation With.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Good, it's a pleasure to have you here. At the Food People, we're very clear about why we do what we do. We're champions of change driven every day by our intent to shift the future of food and drink by harnessing the power of trends. And in this In Conversation With series, it's all about talking to others, other people, other businesses, other brands across the food and drink spectrum to find out more about why they do what they do and how in their way they're championing change and shifting the future of food and drink. Ruth, once again, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you today about this really, really exciting area. Before we get in and talk about Simply Roasted and what that's all about, I wanted to just ask you about your journey into healthy snacking. What have been some of your highlights to this point?
Well, I actually started out in better for you soft drinks. So I launched Vitamin Water, which is a Coke brand in the UK, back in 2010, I think it was. Yeah. And that was a really fun project, I think, mostly because we had the backing of Coke, who are the brand owners, but we were also given the autonomy to run it like a sort of challenger startup. So it sort of had the best of both worlds. And I moved from there to Pop Chips, which is another American company that was launching in the UK, sort of a similar proposition. So I came in right at the beginning, which was an amazing experience. And you know, we weren't just launching a brand at that point. We were really building out the better for you snacking category. And, you know, we did a great job at that, to get all the credit for the success of better for you snacking over the last decade. But seeing that grow and seeing the brand grow in real time was a really amazing journey to be on. I think going from the beginning, when having to explain to everybody what I did, what the brand was, to, you know, people saying, "Oh, I love Pop Chips." And, you know, nice to be a part of that. And then, yeah, obviously a lot of very relevant sort of understanding of the category and the consumer and the kind of what it's missing that I could bring to this new project, Simply Roasted, where I am now.
And it sounds like as well that you've personally been drawn to kind of better for you and healthy snacking, obviously from some of your previous projects. Is there something within healthy and better for you that strikes a bit of a chord with you personally?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think working in marketing, you're kind of convincing people to change their behaviors, and that can be sort of quite nefarious if you work in certain industries. And I think with better for you snacking, you're trying to get people to make a positive change. I mean, you know, and I think that's a really important thing. It's a really fun category to be in as well, which is really important. I mean, I love food and drink, but I think if you're working in better for you, then it's sort of, you can sleep at night because you're pushing people in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's much easier, and we will talk about the kind of deeper meaning behind it. But I think if you've got that, and it's something that you feel personally passionate about, then it makes the whole thing a lot easier, which I suppose leads us on really nicely to Simply Roasted. I mean, can we just start by exploring, you know, what is Simply Roasted? We've heard some bits about it in the media, but tell us what Simply Roasted is.
So basically it's a crisp. It has everything that you love from a crisp, so crunch, sort of satisfaction, flavour, but crucially it has less of the things you don't want. So less fat, 50% less fat, much lower in salt, and under 100 calories a serving. And it's brand new to market, and it's taken 10 years and about 20 million pounds to get to the technology to enable us to deliver something that looks, tastes, feels like a delicious hand-cooked premium crisp, but much better for you.
Excellent. Right, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Beyond obviously being a successful and disruptive snacking brand, what is it that you're aiming to achieve? What is it you're trying to get people to do? What's your kind of purpose beyond just top line success?
I think we're all about making it easier for people to make the right decisions when it comes to snacking. So, we're a nation of crisp lovers. Most people love crisps, but we know, on the other hand, that there's a big issue with our salt and our fat consumption, and that can create a lot of negativity around snacking. So, you feel guilty when you accidentally eat the whole bag. I think there's quite a lot of confusion as to what like healthier is. So, you stand in the snacking aisle and there's tons and tons of options, but it's quite overwhelming, and not, there's a lot of things that are very high in salt still. And so, it's just about making that decision a bit easier. You don't want to compromise. You don't want to lose out on the things that you love. But at the same time, we know that often those things aren't so good for us. So I think, ultimately we're still a crisp. It's still, we're not going to change the world, but it's about those small, easy to make changes that just improve your health a bit, and they add up.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about being part of a bigger equation, I guess, that makes it easier for people to make those healthier choices, but without compromise, right?
I think it's those little easier decisions, that make your life that little bit easier, and we're just a sort of small part to play in that. We're very aware that we're a crisp brand at the end of the day, but equally, I've seen how much people just love crisps. So you can give them a way they can enjoy their favorite snack, without that sort of guilt or negativity, then great.
And given what you're trying to do in a category that has clearly, to this point, certainly up until the recent past, it has been very much about enjoyment and pleasure that's come off the back of high fat, salt and sugar. Do you see, is there a certain responsibility that comes with being a brand like Simply Roasted, given what it is what you're trying to do?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately healthy eating is a personal responsibility, but I think the food industry as a whole has got a responsibility to do better. There's, for a long time, like you say, and we sort of touched on working in marketing, when you're kind of convincing people to buy more of things that we know aren't good for them, and worse than that, there's been a lot of hidden ingredients, over processing, kind of mixed messaging, kind of trying to get things through when you know that they're not good enough. And I think all brands have a responsibility to do better, to offer better alternatives and to strive to improve their nutritional credentials. We're still a crisp, but making those small, easy to make changes for the better, that's a good thing. So yeah, I think we've got a responsibility. I think the rest of the food industry has a responsibility as well.
What do you see as being the need that you're trying to satisfy in the market? I mean, when I think about a healthy crisp without compromise, it sounds like a bit of an oxymoron potentially, but what's the nub of that need that you're going after?
Well, I think you're right that until now it probably has been a bit of an oxymoron. There's been a lot of great innovation in snacking over the last decade, a lot of really great tasting options, but there still isn't a credible alternative to a fried crisp. There's a lot of tasty options out there, but you're looking at puffed lentils, extruded chickpeas. Sometimes you just want a bag of crisps. And I think that's a really huge unmet need that we're answering. I think that hasn't happened yet, and that's something that I've seen from my experience in snacking that is definitely what people are looking for.
Yeah, so you're actually, goes back to basics in as much as it's a healthier potato crisp.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we're a sliced potato crisp, which you don't really think about it too much, but a lot of the baked products they're extruded potato. It's not that sliced potato, and that actually makes quite a big difference. It makes a big difference to how it feels when you're eating it, to the taste, and we're the first to offer that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I have to ask, obviously it's taken 10 years to get to this point, but why do you think now is the right time? Why does snacking need to be disrupted?
Well, I think there's probably never been a better time to launch a healthier crisp, and I'll say that coming off the back of 10 years of amazing category growth. Obviously, we're living through the biggest health crisis of our time, and there's been a sort of parallels to that, renewed focus on obesity by the government, and they're actually taking a more active role now, an interventionist role in that. So obviously there's the HFSS, very hard to say, but
I'm glad you find it hard to say as well.
So the category is going to have to evolve. And I also think that there's that demand is being driven by consumers. So it's sort of the consumers, the government, and then trade as they look to get ready for the HFSS changes. That's three very powerful things coming together. So I think it's the perfect time.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you believe that it has nowhere near peaked. Obviously, there've been 10 years of impressive growth in this area from to the size of the opportunity that it is now. But how much more is there in it, do you think?
Well, I think that potentially we're moving into sort of a golden age for healthier snacking now. I mean, one potentially positive things have come out of the last 18 months is that the health conversation, I think for a long time when we talked about healthy and better for you snacking, it was really still about diet and weight loss, and that is what people equated it to. And you wanted to lose weight, and yes, we used different wording around it, but that was that was what was really driving consumer behavior. And now I think it's moved, and we're looking at being truly healthy. So it's not just about losing weight, it's about being having better energy, better immunity, longevity. And I think it's a really positive change, and hopefully something that will be a sort of longer lasting, looking after yourself and looking after your body and eating well. That's a really positive thing. So I think that has shifted. And we're still living through an obesity crisis. It's getting worse, not better. We've been talking about it for 10 years and it's still here. So that's obviously a massive nuanced issue that's not going to be resolved by one crisp brand, and we're not saying that, but the industry as a whole needs to be providing viable, healthier options, and they need to be tasty, because if people aren't going to change otherwise. So I think you'll be seeing a lot of innovation in healthier snacking for years to come.
And if I were eating them now, what's your kind of confidence level that I would feel that there's no compromise and I would enjoy them just as much as a bag of crisps cooked in a traditional way, let's say?
Well, I've tried them. Not many people have yet, because we've only just started production. But I'd say I think in blind tests, which we will be doing once we launch, I don't think you'd be able to tell.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive, because if you can have that truly without compromise, that's groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Who do you see as being the target? And we talked about some different behavioural traits. Is it the health conscious? It is an everyday snacker. Is it suitable for kids and kids' lunchboxes and those types of things? Who are you going after?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, people who love crisps, which is pretty much everybody, isn't it? But yeah, I think you do need to be looking to be healthier. That's, otherwise you're not going to be just going to go straight for your sort of standard bag of crisps. But I'd say that's a pretty broad audience now. I mean, we are working to be a foodie brand, so we've got a really huge pipeline of flavors, and we want people to pick them up because they look and sound delicious and they've got interesting and innovative flavors, and then be like, oh wow, and they're better for me. So we want to be for the sort of foodie, adventurous foodie who likes their premium crisps. We are lower in salt as well, so we are a brand that the whole family can enjoy. So we're not a specifically children's brand, but we're much lower in salt than the rest of the market.
And we touched on a couple of times the HFSS targets. I managed to say it quite quickly then. How does Simply Roasted compare on those key measures?
I believe that we are the category leaders on that. So we have a score of 0, I think, which is you can't get much better than that. So from the sort of benchmarking that we've done, I think we're the best, at least sliced crisp brand on the market.
And did you start with the HFSS targets in mind and work back, or how did you kind of get to this point?
No, I mean, I think, you know, obviously this has been in development for 10 years. This is way before HFSS. That's been kind of a sort of fortuitous timing thing for us, where we were always going to launch it. We were always going to come out with these nutritional profile, and it just happened to be, I mean, you know, we set out to create a better for you crisp, so it was always going to be better on some of the measures. I think the interesting thing is the salts, and I think that is, you know, we all know about fat, and there's a few other brands out there with a low fat message, but the salt I think is really interesting, and it's not as hot a topic yet, but it is a leading contributor to obesity, and I think it will become one.
Yeah, definitely. And again, you've mentioned 10 years, and it's obviously taken 10 years to get to this point. Why has it taken 10 years? Because it sounds relatively simple, and not wishing to obviously dumb down all the work that's gone on over the 10 years, but you've arrived at a relatively simple solution. So why has it taken 10 years to get here?
Yeah, well, firstly, that wasn't my work over the last 10 years. So I don't take any offense into that. I don't know the answer to that. What I can say is this is there's minimal processing involved in making this. So it's not that it's like some like Willy Wonka-esque, it goes in one end and comes out 20 minutes later the other. But I think the nuances of the temperatures and the exact stages of the process, it is difficult but simple. The output is simple. And you know, these things I think take time, and you need to have the technology available, and there's sort of different moving parts to this which kind of needed to fall into place.
Sure. Sorry, deliberately provocative question. Not in any way. I'm sure there's an awful lot of hard work that's gone in over the last 10 years. You touched on it a little bit there, and I appreciate that it is all in the process. There's a lot in the process, which clearly you're not going to tell me all the detail behind it. But what can you tell us about the cooking process? Intrigued to find out just a little bit more.
Yeah, well, we have our own factory in Norfolk, so we've built our own factory, which has been a lot of someone else's hard work again. And we've got, within that factory, we've got some unique ovens. So there's a 3-stage roasting process that the crisps go through, and that is the sort of the secret, the magic stage of the process. So everything around that is very straightforward. So the sort of potatoes are picked like locally, transported to our factory, washed, sliced, then they go through the kind of magic 3-oven roasting system, and then they're just seasoned using natural seasonings and bagged. So it is a sort of simple when you know how.
Yeah, but a closely guarded.
It's a closely guarded proprietary secret. Yeah.
No, definitely. Well, thank you for sharing just a little bit of info about the process. I have to ask you about flavour. Firstly, which is your favourite flavour out of the ones that you're launching with, and why?
Well, sea salt and cider vinegar is my favourite, but it always is. I think when you're a salt and vinegar person, you're a salt and vinegar person.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's lovely, and it's really nice and punchy though, because I think you need that sort of vinegar.
You get that real vinegar twang from it. That sort of lip smacking.
Yeah.
And tell us about the naked product as well. What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, well, we've got the base tastes so great that we're just bringing out a SKU, and it's not one of our launch ones actually, but later down the line, just a naked crisp, so no salt. And I think that is appealing to, as you know, as we touched on salt briefly, but obviously something that's, and we're low in salt anyway, but something that's just literally just potato. They just taste good enough for us to be able to do that. I think I don't know, why necessarily versus a traditional fried crisp. I think sometimes when you have all of that oil, it's it tastes a bit off-putting, and that's why it's sort of masked with a lot of salt and a lot of flavouring. that we don't have that. So yeah, they just taste like potato, like delicious potatoes.
Yeah, like potato. I was just going to say, you can obviously, it's about the potato, the flavour of the potato. Yeah. And I'm also personally, I'm a bit of a flavour hunter when it comes to crisps as well. So you've, and I think probably quite rightly, played it relatively safe, although the truffle sounds incredible. When it comes to flavour profiles for launch, have you got anything a little bit more adventurous for those flavour hunters coming later on?
We do. So I agree with you. We've got the kind of classic 3 flavours and got black truffle, which is part of our core, which is, I think that's the one that people have been most excited about when I've sort of shown them the brand. But yeah, we have an amazing pipeline of flavours ready to go. So like I said, we want to be a really foodie, adventurous brand that's leading on flavour innovation. So we've got a few things that are, you know, totally new to market and absolutely delicious. So we'll start to launch those fairly soon after we launch. So you'll see soon. But yeah, huge pipeline and more coming as well.
That's great. And can you give us any clues of anything to look out for, or not yet?
Yeah, go on. So my favourite that we're working on is a Korean barbecue.
Oh wow, yeah, that sounds
really,
delicious.
I mean,
particularly if that's a punchy Korean barbecue,
sort of like a spicy, smoky.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, lovely, excellent. And you mentioned the future there. Looking to the future, gosh, it's probably hard to even think about at this stage, but what does that future horizon look like for the Simply Roasted brand? You know, where do you see it? Where can it go?
I mean, we really believe that this is the future of snacking. So we think we're the first brand that truly bridges that gap between healthy and indulgent. And that is a new sort of space in the category. I would expect to see it in every sort of major malt in not too much time. And I expect it to be a household name in the not too distant future. You know, we've got really ambitious growth plans, but you know, given how great the product is and, you know, the sort of trends that we talked about that we're riding, like, I think it's realistic.
Bringing it right back to the present, when do you expect, when can I expect listeners expect to be able to get our hands on a packet of Simply Roasted?
We're launching in September, so we'll be going into sort of leading London independent stores then, and then rolling out from there. So available through our own online shop about the same time, and then sort of ramping up to more mainstream distribution early next year.
Oh, that sounds really, really exciting. Yeah, I have to say, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
I will send you some soon.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. One of the things I wanted to ask you about as well, and I know in speaking to your colleagues as well, you're an all-female leadership team, and I wanted to ask you how does that influence your way of doing business, your business culture, and do you think some of the decisions that you've made have been different because of that? I'd love to just get your perspective on that.
Well, I think firstly, it's sort of to flip it a bit, it's the business culture that has enabled a female leadership team. So, you know, I've got 2 small children. Obviously, this last year and a half has been particularly difficult in those circumstances. But I think within this business, there's been a total acceptance of that and a respect for that, and my time with them that's just enabled me to do this job. So, you know, I think I've been told, and I'm sure it's the same for many women, I had to choose between kids and a career, and actually that's borne out not to be true. You just need to find a business where, you know, they will be flexible, and it's really not that difficult in this day and age, and yet seems to be still not the norm, which is a shame. And, you know, it means that you lose a lot of talent is lost from the industry, and because the just companies haven't adapted, which is a shame. So I think, firstly, you know, that's been the benefit of the culture. And I guess, you know, it's difficult. I don't know. I think businesses on the whole benefit when there are different viewpoints and different, you know, it's more representative. I think on a sort of basic level, women tend to still be the primary shopper, you know, mums tend to be the primary shopper. So I can put my consumer hat on and look at it from that perspective, which is really useful. But I think it's, you know, it's not just about gender, is it? It's about having different viewpoints within businesses, and you can only really get to that when you sort of change the culture to enable that to happen.
Yeah, and I have to say it's something that we identified really early on in our business evolution 13-14 years ago. When we first started out, we could see a whole raft of talent that was having to make those choices exactly as you were describing, between career and family. And in fact, some of the people who are still with us to this day actually are people that we were able to provide that balance to. So completely concur with that. And it's great that you managed to find that in the culture within your business. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think everybody benefits, don't they? It's sort of seen for a long time as flexible working or part-time meant that, it wasn't as good, and that's just not true. And I think if, again, nobody wants to go back to sort of the dark days of trying to work with your children running around in the background. But it did show that if you can work in those circumstances with kids, then when they're back at school, it's really not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the dog barking now.
Yeah.
Children running around. Simply Roasted is one of the brands of Mindful Snacker. Can you just, we talked primarily about Simply Roasted. What is Mindful Snacker, and how does that work? Just tell us a little bit more about Mindful Snacker.
Sure. So Mindful Snacker, our sort of broader purpose is aligned with Simply Roasted, really, in the sense that we launch brands that are making it easier to make better choices, and all of the brands that we have are enabled to do that by technology and innovation, basically. So very, very innovative products. The next one, the one that we're working on at the moment, which is actually going to launch probably about the same time as Simply Roasted, so it's been quite busy, is a range of dairy alternatives, plant-based sauces, dips, and we've got a huge pipeline with that. So that is a completely different category, and a sort of slightly different, you're sort of moving not into just talking about health. There are some health benefits to going plant-based, but actually that, it's a lot more sustainable. So, which is again something I'm really passionate about. So that's a really great thing to be working on. And again, a category that needs disrupting because, again, there's been a lot of innovation in plant-based. It's another trend that's going crazy at the moment, but genuinely delicious dairy-free or dairy alternatives don't really exist. And I'm saying that as a committed cheese eater. It's and I think it's a swap people are really up for making and are looking to make. And, just look at the success of Oatly to know that it's possible once you get the product right. But until now, that just hasn't been the case. So, that's really exciting. And it's nice for me to be looking at a different category rather.
Have you got a brand name for that?
We do. That is called The Simple Root.
Okay, brilliant.
And so they're based on root vegetables.
Oh, fantastic. Did you say sauces, dips, those types of things?
Yeah, exactly. So we're launching those. We'll be doing a sort of trade launch in the next few weeks, and then launching into market sort of September, October time. And I
assume I'll be able to dip my Simply Roasted into
exactly
products as well.
Exactly. But we've also got sort of some kind of classic swap cooking sauces,
right?
Like a bechamel, and then some more, again, sort of similar to Simply Roasted, some more like foodie. Got some more truffle in there.
Fantastic. You're a bit of a fan of truffle.
Yeah. It's just wow. It's quite Marmite, isn't it? Not everybody is, but I think for the people who love it, they love it. And also truffles it's a huge trend at the moment, isn't it? It's
from a flavour point of view, absolutely elevating the everyday through truffle. Couldn't agree more. So both of these will be coming to market around the same sort of time later in the year.
Yeah, it's gonna be busy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant, Ruth. Thank you so much for joining me today. That concludes this episode of The Food People in Conversation with Ruth. On behalf of us all at The Food People and the In Conversation with audience, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Simply Roasted, the story so far, and all the excitement that we can look forward to coming down the track from healthy snacking without compromise. It's been a great pleasure to speak to you today. Thanks, Ruth.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So do join our TFP community for the details of our latest In Conversation with episodes, as well as the latest free to access food and drink trends foresight. Visit thefoodpeople.co.uk, complete your details at the footer of the page. So on behalf of Ruth and myself, thank you so much for listening to the Food People In Conversation with today. And as always, leave you with one question: how are you shifting the future of food and drink? Thanks for listening. See you next time.